The age of the Crucible was chaotic and unregulated, where all life was once blended together. A crucible, defined as a container in which other substances may be melted or subjected to very high temperatures, or as a situation of severe trial, or in which different elements interact, leading to the creation of something new, aptly captures the essence of this age. So, it was likely a brief yet pivotal era, and served as a crucial juncture after the Great Tree civilization that brimmed with a myriad of possibilities. The stump of the Great Tree gave rise to several promising offshoots, a concept nicely depicted in surviving Crucible imagery. Siluria's tree, for instance, is explicitly modelled on its crucible. The Crucible tree helm holds the power of the Crucible of life. These multiple, overlapping fangs grow from a single root. Perhaps they're a vestige of the primordial Crucible, again hinting at the interconnected nature of the age. There are statues that depict the early Crucible too. The newfound sprouts of the Great Tree were evidently venerated, and the Crucible became a focal point of faith. Born partially of devolution, it was considered a signifier of the divine in ancient times. Siluria's tree is imbued with ancient holy essence, emphasizing its sacred nature. After all, the power to enable creatures to manifest aspects of entirely distinct species was a marvel. For instance, humans could develop bony knots, scales, or even feathers. Misbegotten are the epitome of this phenomenon, with features drawn from a multitude of species to the extent that their true ancestry has been forgotten. Such was the chaos of life in the age of the Crucible. But within that disorder was opportunity, ripe for a new faction to emerge, for a fresh religion to sweep across the land. And the Greater Will did not hesitate. The Greater Will sent a golden star bearing a beast into the lands between, which would later become the Elden Ring. Crucially, the Elden Beast wasn't the Elden Ring originally. The fusion occurred at a later point. Even in the present day, the Elden Beast remains a well-kept secret, with scant references available. This suggests that the Elden Beast operated discreetly and clandestinely recruited beings to act as its representatives. Thus did they employ the Fingers. Fingers cannot speak, yet these are eloquent. Persistently they wriggle, spelling out mysteries in the air. Thus did we gain the words of our faith. This new faith was founded on the teachings of the Two Fingers, for Marika was yet to join their ranks. Theirs was a language of light, capable of crafting a formless cipher, which deals holy damage no shield can repel. Importantly, their power stemmed from the Elden Beast, with their associated incantations serving as weaker echoes of those from the ancient Erdtree. Instead, their primary role was that of prophets, beings capable of communing directly with the Greater Will itself. In turn, they were able to command the awe and respect of the populace as conduits for the divine.
The Fingers tremble to welcome you. Let their wisdom wash over you. Let the words of the Fingers guide you.
Crucially, the Fingers and their words are distinct from the Greater Will itself, as illustrated by Enya.
The Fingers would never permit it, nor would the Greater Will.
Thus, any information garnered from finger readers is questionable at best. The burgeoning religion swiftly gained traction. Meanwhile, the Elden Beast chose one offshoot of the Crucible, or perhaps grafted a branch on. Nonetheless, this singular sprout was infused with the Elden Beast's power, a power capable of nurturing a mighty golden tree destined to loom majestically over the land, an area the Elden Beast is highly experienced in. During this period, the Crucible remained red. The red tinge mirrors the primordial matter that became the Erdtree, primordial gold, said to be close in nature to life itself. The Elden Beast specifically cultivated this chosen offshoot at the expense of all others. In the Greater Will's vision, there was room for only one tree, for which there would be but one god. Meanwhile, a figure named Godfrey, formerly known as Hoaraloo, the chieftain of the brave warriors of the Badlands, was steadily ascending in power. During the age of the Crucible, he too recognized the opportunities unfolding and enlisted 16 knights of exceptional skill, forming the renowned Crucible Knights. Among them, 2 were held in particularly high esteem, Siluria and Ordovis. The great tree ornamentation is the Knight of Siluria's mark, displayed also by her men. The axe ornamentation is the Knight Ordovis's mark. Hoarelu likely emerged as Godfrey before assuming the title of Elden Lord. Sarosh, Lord of Beasts, went to become King Godfrey's regent. This unique use of the epithet King rather than Elden Lord may imply a potential temporal distinction. Furthermore, Godfrey used the fortified manor as his operational base for a time, which must have been after allying with Sarosh, since the architecture features lion reliefs that indicate its previous purpose. While there is nothing that explicitly states whether Godfrey conquered the manor, the absence of references to Sarosh's present-day injuries suggests a possible conflict where these 2 leaders, as heads of their respective factions, might have engaged in one-on-one combat to minimize casualties, and thus needs no public explanation. Godfrey, who later exhibited a merciful approach throughout his reign, may have then seen in Sarosh a worthy opponent. As a result, he enlisted Sarosh as Beast Regent, forming an alliance with the Beasts and showcasing Godfrey's new diplomatic and strategic skills that Hoarelu likely lacked. Whatever the case was, it was under Godfrey's leadership that the Roundtable Hold, known as the Gathering Place of Champions, was established. Champions, and later Tarnished, assembled at Godfrey's operational headquarters, sitting at a round table that now features a collection of unique armaments. These weapons are embedded into its surface, serving as a symbolic representation of the retiring of the Round Table's original role. Notably, the most distinctive weapon among them is an axe, reminiscent of the theme surrounding Godfrey, not Hoarelu, who fought with only his bare fists. The throne room of the Roundtable Hold has been repurposed for the 2 fingers, but the remaining throne is of the same design as the one near Godfrey's statue in Stormvale, as well as the Elden Lord's throne under the Erdtree. Thus, the manor and the Roundtable Hold served as a strategic base for Godfrey before his ascent to Elden Lordship, providing a gathering place for him and his knights as equals around the table. Subsequently, the purpose of the Hold underwent a transformation and became a space utilized by the 2 fingers, a changeover that surely coincided with Godfrey's integration into the new Erdtree religion. Indeed, the retired weapons on the surface of the round table are actually embedded within an Erdtree and Crucible sigil, which neatly dates this as the early stage of the Erdtree. Either way, the Erdtree allied with Godfrey and subsequently altered the Hold's purpose. Godfrey retired from his role as king, from working as equals with his knights, and ceded control of the Roundtable Hold to the 2 fingers. And he assumed the mantle of the first Elden Lord, one of the earliest pieces of misinformation from the Erdtree era, by marrying the soon-to-be infamous Marika. Marika stands as a figure of unparalleled influence, significance, and relevance in the history of the Lands Between right to the present day. And yet, despite her profound impact, she remains an enigma. Even the Erdtree ages are denoted by the corresponding Elden Lords and leave Marika's name separate. The Newmen are in fact of the same stock as Queen Marika herself, and are said to have come from outside the Lands Between. Newmen are supposed descendants of denizens of another world, long-lived but seldom born. It is certainly curious that both statements which describe the Newmen as foreign to the Lands Between are ambiguous. Given that Marika is later falsely denoted as the one true God, not to mention the propaganda surrounding the 2 fingers and the Erdtree society as a whole, it is clear she was well gifted in the art of deception and controlling the flow of information. Thus, it is both possible and probable that in the process of becoming queen, and later god of the Lands Between, Marika actively sought to distance herself from her true origins. Perhaps the information surrounding Newman was part of a calculated narrative she propagated to manipulate public perceptions. Such mastery over information will be a theme throughout Marika's history. Whether Marika was brought from distant lands, another world, or perhaps more likely was already within the capital, the Elden Beast and the Two Fingers recognized her potential as an Empyrean. Perhaps her value to them extended to her ability to influence Godfrey, as she held a power over him that compelled a loyalty so unwavering it persisted through countless hardships and trials to the present day. And Godfrey was central to their plans for two primary reasons. First was his remarkable battle prowess. The age of the Erdtree began amongst conflict, when Godfrey was lord of the battlefield. After all, in the beginning, everything was in opposition to the Erdtree. The second reason lay in Godfrey's alliance with beasts, which consequently extended to the dragons, the culture with one of two powers capable of undermining the Erdtree's power. After all, Godfrey clearly has positive relations with them, not just shown by the Lord of Beasts becoming his regent, but also in the bespoke weapons crafted for him and the Golden Lineage. These weapons were clearly crafted using the same techniques of the Beastmen, and served to honour their union. Thus was Marika chosen to join the emerging Erdtree-to-be faction. Her own eye, in all likelihood, was engraved with an Elden rune. Solemn duty weighs upon the one beholden, not unlike a gnawing curse from which there is no deliverance. An important question arises now: did Radagon exist at this point? Was his eye also engraved during this period? His Elden rune is prominently depicted in his statues, suggesting it was crucial for his role. In the present day, this power manifests as roots blocking the path within the Erdtree. But his rune's symbolism does seem reminiscent of a trellis, a structure that would have been of profound importance for those endeavouring to cultivate the Erdtree offshoot during the chaos of the Crucible. Perhaps Radagon was initially enlisted during this early Erdtree era for the power of his Elden rune. It cannot be certain, however, whether Radagon was always a part of Marika, only that in the present day, Radagon is Marika. Indeed, Marika saying to Radagon,
"Thou art yet to become me,"
definitely suggests they were not always one and the same. Furthermore, their motivations seem to have been totally distinct and independent. Radagon was central to the establishment of the Golden Order, and yet Marika chose to search the depths of the Golden Order. Radagon had little to no knowledge of incantations, and only as the husband of Queen Marika did he study them. Marika shattered the Elden Ring, and Radagon attempted to repair it. Only one can manifest at a time when meeting the Tarnished. Radagon's fixation to aspire to be complete could imply he's only a part of Marika and seeks complete autonomy, but this conflicts with the intention to fuse with Marika in later years. However, if he sought higher status when he was first recruited, and was denied due to lacking qualities deemed fitting, this might explain his fixation. After all, he clearly honed his fighting techniques through the years, to later become a champion, whose qualities are accentuated by his Soul Seal: vigor, endurance, strength, and dexterity. Next, he sought to master sorceries and incantations, and thus the mind. The only stat seemingly untouched was Arcane. It seems most likely that Marika and Radagon were not always the same entity, but at the very least, their goals and characters are distinct and independent from each other. Therefore, going forward, they will be treated as separate entities, and Radagon's public debut would not be for many years. Godfrey was made Marika's Elden Lord, and when he vowed to become a lord, he took the Beast Regent Sarosh upon his back to suppress the ceaseless lust for battle that raged within. This happened before the war against the Fire Giants, where Marika called him My Lord Godfrey. Marika was given Malekith, a shadowbound beast by the Dragon faction, but she had little use for him at this time. Perhaps he took part in the Erdtree battles over the years, or he could have continued in his role as a beast clergyman. During this time, was Marika elevated to the status of godhood, made to be one more god among many? Or would that take place many years later, upon the creation of the Golden Order? Either way, her ascension, when and indeed where it took place, has been hidden from view in the present day. The timeline of the next few events is difficult to place, particularly due to the mystery surrounding the Erdtree's physicality in the present day. There are those who question whether it can be seen at all. Do you see the Erdtree towering o'er?
Surely you see it too. The gold that enshrouds the heavens. The great tree which begets the pillars of light.
Indeed, at times, from certain angles, the Erdtree does appear to be translucent. Though these sources are somewhat circumstantial, there are crumbs elsewhere that may be related. The snake is viewed as a traitor to the Erdtree, the audience delighted in seeing these bronze effigies beaten and battered. The disdain for snakes seems much more intense than for, say, the Black Flame monks, who were also called traitors for abandoning their posts as guardians of the Flame of Ruin. The snakes must therefore have done something far worse. The term traitor implies the snakes were once aligned with the Erdtree faction. Thus, considering the cultural ties between Farum Azula and Gelmir, this betrayal likely occurred after Godfrey was made Elden Lord. Though the history of the snake betrayal has been lost to time, the Volcano Manor in the present day has in fact revived what came before. For Rykard began on his blasphemous path after discovering the ancient hexes of Gelmir. The arrogance of attempting to harness the volcano is solely that of men and serpents. This path has led to recusants, those who would kill their own in the pursuit of power, with the ultimate aim of overthrowing the gods and burning the Erdtree. There are even paintings that depict such an event. But what if these paintings are not prophetic, but historic, and the Erdtree was once burnt? There yet remain in the area flags of the tree that preceded the Erdtree, which implies the snakes are loyal not to the Erdtree, but to that which came before, fully converted by the crusades of the banished knights. Perhaps they saw the Erdtree as an impostor, for it is clearly the Erdtree in the paintings. Burning the Erdtree would certainly constitute a traitorous act, one that would far surpass that of the fire monks. The environment within Leyendell itself adds to this, in particular the significant portion buried in ash in the present day. The burning of the Erdtree is the first cardinal sin. The prophet despaired, looking up at the Erdtree. For soon the kindling would burst into flame, bringing ruin. Such a prophecy is unlikely to be a reference to the role of the Tarnished in the present day, as the world has already descended into ruin. The use of soon confirms this, since many years have passed to the present day. Instead, it suggests the burning of the Erdtree was deemed the first cardinal sin because it represented a pivotal and early obstacle for the Erdtree society. The final clue to the burning of the Erdtree is from its first age, the Age of Plenty, a time the Icon Shield looks back fondly upon. This era was characterized by abundant resources and tangible blessings for its followers. The grace of gold blessed those who were first to serve it with the most vivid coloration. The Erdtree was once as warm as the gentle sun, and would gradually heal all who bathed in its rays. Melina's unique incantation uses the sigil of this era, and forms a life-giving tree of light. When the age of the Erdtree began, such blessings were personally bestowed upon their recipients by Queen Marika herself. This pose for Marika may in fact indicate her origins, for it seems highly evocative of the funerary statues seen during the previous era. But where those celebrated death, Marika celebrated life and granted blessings. The Erdtree sought not to continue the cycle of life and death, but to renew life through its power into a cycle of rebirth and renewal. But this age of plenty, marked by its abundance, is commonly juxtaposed with the rapid decline of these blessings, transforming the Erdtree into more of a symbolic role for its followers. The Erdtree once flourished with abundance, yet it was only for a fleeting moment. Such is the course of all life. It was once thought that the blessed sap of the Erdtree would drip from its boughs forever, but that age of plenty swiftly came to a close. If the Erdtree was indeed burnt, it would provide a fitting explanation for the abrupt shift in its role. The spirit of the Erdtree, still very real and physical in various aspects, just like many spirits in the lands between, manifested in place of the original, and with time, the Erdtree became more an object of faith, as building faith inherently takes time. In the end, there can be no certainty. The Ashen Leyendell could be explained by the burning of the tree that formed the Crucible, and such ancient details have been obscured through time. But if the Erdtree was burnt, surely it must have occurred before the war against the fire giants and the sealing of the Flame of Ruin, unless there is some other means not presently known that can burn world trees. Thus, since the war took place at the birth of the Erdtree, the Age of Plenty really was brief, a fleeting moment of serenity and perhaps happiness before an age of war began. However, the line between Crucible and Erdtree is unclear, and instead represents a scale that gradually shifted over time, from the red tinge, the primordial matter of the Erdtree, to the gold it is well known for today. This shift is illustrated beautifully by the aspects of the Crucible, which are, in fact, ancient Erdtree incantations. For the Erdtree was originally just an aspect of the primordial Crucible, where all life was once blended together. Thus, the birth of the Erdtree is a rather flexible term that likely describes the public debut of the Erdtree faction rather than the literal beginning of the Erdtree's life, whose circumstance has been wiped from history. The precise extent to which the Erdtree culture was established before the war against the giants remains unclear, but much of the framework was already present. Key figures such as their queen and elden lord, as well as the Crucible Knights and the Two Fingers, were already part of this nascent society. Additionally, there were guardians of the Erdtree. In accordance with an ancient pact with the Erdtree, it is said that their deaths led not to destruction, but instead to renewed, eternal life as guardians, an offer which, once destined death was sealed and the Erdtree renewed all life, would have little meaning. This ancient pact held significance because the era traditionally welcomed death. While in the present day, these guardians also surround minor Erdtrees, in the initial stages, they likely defended only the Erdtree itself, and have continued in their role ever since. Importantly, the dragons and the Glowmide Queen were still present during this period. The defeat of the Glowmide Queen marked the beginning of the Golden Order, a development that was still many years away, and will be discussed in due course. Furthermore, the power of the Black Flame, destined death, must surely have been present after the war against the giants to tempt the fire monks into becoming traitors, and to give meaning to the ancient pact of the Erdtree Guardians. It's probable that the art of perfuming arose near the beginning of the Erdtree, as must have Miranda flowers. Throughout history, perfumers have prized this Miranda pollen. For, as will become evident, the delineation between history and prehistory seems to be dictated by Marika and the Erdtree Empire. In the beginning, everything was in opposition to the Erdtree. Through Godfrey, an alliance was achieved to both the beasts and dragons, but the snakes had made their position clear. Traitors, who at the very least intended to burn the Erdtree. Indeed, even the birth of the Erdtree met with turmoil, though it has since been obscured. Faced with this threat, or worse, Leyendell transitioned from its typically defensive design and sought to remove the Erdtree's greatest threat. The giant's flame is the Flame of Ruin, capable of burning the Erdtree. In ancient times, the giants were mortal enemies of the Erdtree. Their bellowing roars desolated nature, triggered avalanches, and whipped up storms of flame. The first Elden Lord, Godfrey, led the war against the giants, showcasing his charisma as a commander. Among his ranks were ancient champions of the Erdtree, who likely made use of the Ash of War Vow of the Indomitable to imbue with golden power, granting momentary invincibility. Then there were his faithful Crucible Knights. But there were also some new factions that were recruited along the way. There were the Knights of Zamor, who earned great renown during the war. The faction of Zamor were easy to recruit, since these long-lived warriors are said to have been the mortal enemies of the fire giants since time immemorial. Then there were the Fire Monks, along with their recent associates, the Thorn Sorcerers. How the monks were convinced to change sides is unclear, though their later weakness for the Black Flame hints at their impressionable natures. While it's possible that they learnt to fear the flame following the war, they might have already harboured an apprehension of the fire giants even when aligned to them. This incantation does not burn the caster, and so it is considered forbidden by the Guardians of the Flame. Nonetheless, their fire was, ironically, indispensable for the war, during which it protected the champions of the Erdtree. Finally, there were trolls. As giants were to titans, trolls were to giants. Their smaller kin, trolls are descended from the giants. Once again, Marika and Godfrey must have been persuasive to convince the trolls to betray their kind. But this event was not sudden. It was premeditated and well planned. To support the trolls in their allegiance, bespoke swords were made and given to the giants who fought for the Erdtree. Additionally, a unique and permanent transformation was bestowed upon each troll. Their stomachs, their connections to the fell god, were removed and replaced with a unique stone featuring a cross pattern, most likely to ensure this change was permanent. The trolls were highly effective warriors during the war, and have continued to serve the Empire to the present day. In particular, the name of the ancient troll warrior Theodorix lives on as a hero of the war against the giants. While there may have been other individuals or groups involved, such as perfumers or Radagon, there is no available evidence to support the presence of other factions. Thus, it is likely the astrologers left the mountaintops when the fighting started, if they hadn't already done so. The war against the giants was a brutal conflict. The Erdtree faction carved winding paths in the cliff walls right up to the summit, leading to the untrodden, snow-laden region beyond. This suggests the Grand Lifts were not yet established, which will be discussed in due course, and marks the ascent as but the first major trial. The length and intensity of the war are suggested by the construction of key buildings, such as the Guardian's Garrison, the Church of Repose, and the First Church of Marika. Whether these were built during the war or afterwards, the allocation of resources to such buildings in a region that would soon become forbidden speaks to the scale of the bloodshed.
In Marika's own words, "Hark, brave warriors. Hark, my Lord Godfrey, we commend your deeds. Guidance hath delivered ye through each ordeal to the place ye stand. Put the giants to the sword, confine the flame atop the mount."
The war against the giants. Champions battle. Trolls betray. Fire vanquished. The era of the Erdtree begins. The fire giants borrowed from the power of a fell god, and still they were defeated. This statement suggests that the giants did indeed employ the destructive power of their flame during the war, deviating from their passive philosophy. Faced with the imminent threat of extinction and having nowhere to retreat, the giants tried everything, but soon realized all was lost. Judging by the repeated, passive, frozen pose of their corpses, it seems they willingly surrendered in recognition of the overwhelming power of Godfrey and his diverse army. Marika, though her intentions were better masked as time went on, then showed her true colours. Godfrey would likely have given them mercy, but Marika was ruthless. She had no interest in mercy, and instead sought only to minimise the risk to the Erdtree. The surrendering giants were rewarded not with peace. Instead, they faced a mass execution. Marika saw them as trifling, as unimportant and trivial, despite their previous threat to her Erdtree. Each giant met their end with what seems to be the formidable power of Thorn sorcery, presumably drawn from the Thorn sorcerers, whose camps also feature the same phenomenon. Power of a much larger scale than the Thorn sorcery seen in the present, and their corpses were simply left, unceremoniously frozen in time. Upon realizing the flames of their forge would never die, Queen Marika marked the last surviving giant with a curse. "O trifling giant, mayest thou tend thy flame for eternity." Marika was skilled in the art of curses, able to afflict even this powerful being that yet harboured the fell god within. And Marika was a master of misinformation. Trixem's shield depicting a malformed, one-eyed god. This evil deity is believed to have been slain by Queen Marika, a perfect illustration of the types of misdirection Marika continually employed in shaping historical narratives to serve her agenda. Following the war against the Giants Flame's ruinous blaze was sealed, and guardians were appointed to watch over it. The fire prelates were likely established at this time as commanders of the fire monks. The weighty frames of the prelates symbolized the onus of their grave vows as guardians of the flame. Marika, presumably, instructed them to etch this sight upon thine breast, of my thunderous gravity, using the threatening tone she often employed. The mountaintops likely dropped in temperature once the power of the fire giants was sealed away, and it might have been then that the river froze. Downstream, the consecrated snowfields show signs of a once flourishing region, evident in the settlements and groups of trees, bisected by, at one point, fresh, running water. So too were numerous trees once scattered across the mountaintops, now reduced to spirits. So began the age of the Erdtree. Whether now or earlier, the period of Erdtree bounty was brief, dissolving over time into an object of faith. The war against the giants was just the beginning, for the ensuing age was not marked by the abundance of the Erdtree, but by the blood righteously spilled in its name during the crusades of Godfrey, Lord of the battlefield. Thank you for joining for this episode on the Timeline of Elden Ring. For more, consider supporting the channel and get early access to upcoming releases. You can also have your own theories featured in video format on the channel, or even get access to new Lore Before Bed videos ad-free for less than $1. Your support makes content like this possible, so thank you.